On today's episode, we're going to take a look at USA's win over Team Canada in hoops, the good and the bad. We've also got Chris Ryen on that, Embiid, what's going on in TV, and then mail it in summer topics with Ceruti. Which player would everyone be the happiest about if he retired, and who's got the toughest job in the NBA player-wise? And Kyle is back. A little life advice with our guy back in the crown jewel of the Americas. It's good to watch some hoops last night, and I almost missed it a little bit. US beat Team Canada last night, 86-72. It was a bad start. I mean, really bad. So I don't know how many of you watched the game. It's not a shock as they try to sort things out, but always try to remind ourselves, like, it's not like Team Canada has been together for years and years and years working on their three-man weave, Leo DiCaprio style. So it's 11-1 to start the game. Canada's up. We've got just bad turnovers. I don't know if it's the ball or what it was or how hard it was for a lot of the American players hanging onto the basketball. LeBron had a great cut, and then I don't know if he bobbled it or if somebody got a hand in there. He threw it out of bounds on a play to Steph that he even mentioned after the game. Booker had a turnover. Ant comes in, and I'm like, okay, I wonder if Ant is going to change the momentum of this game. And he ended up having a good overall game. But first possession, he gets it. It gets into his feet, loses the basketball. And you're like, this is a mess. And it really dawned on me, like, how many times have you ever seen this many talented players play this poorly collectively for 10 straight minutes? And it just felt like everybody was playing poorly to start this game. And look, guys ended up playing a little bit better later on. Tatum was aggressive. There's some good stuff there. Ant ended up playing well. Drew had some awesome defensive moments as well. I really like the Anthony Davis and Bam pairing, which brings us to another question, because Embiid had a really rough night, fouled out in 12 minutes. He was playing practice speed defense, and he got a nice elbow in on Dwight Powell to kind of round things out, which is the Olympic, or I'd say international version of a hostile act, because then Powell hit some free throws. Powell even went up to him and was like, what was that? And when big guys have guys cutting towards the basket, especially if they're littler guys, like the old school thing is always, if you're a big guy, just make them feel you. Don't let them just run around in that area of the court. So a lot of that stuff can happen, and it can look really bad. So I don't know if it was intentional by Embiid or if he just got up high and missed him, but it ended up kind of looking a little nasty there, which is a little bit of a carryover from what we saw during that Knicks series, where it's like, is Embiid just really dirty now all of a sudden? So I think the issue after the awful start, 0-6 from the floor, 8 turnovers in the first quarter. I'm telling you, like, the turnovers weren't just, oh, hey, he lost the ball or whatever. It's just, it looked like a very disjointed group for such a long time. But they get it to 70-54. They end up winning the game, as we know. And I went through some of the positives there a little bit earlier. I do wonder about the defense, because I think the best overall thing that I saw in trying to project what they're going to look like moving forward was Davis and Bam playing together. And I've always thought this about Bam. I just wondered, it's a bit like Al Horford, he would tell you, because I've asked him about this. And as the game evolved, it made more sense for him to be a center. But all those years in Atlanta, I think the best version of Horford would have been as a power forward. I think he came into the league as a power forward. Well, he did. And I know Philly toyed with the plan, but the spacing with Embiid, like, it just wasn't a really good fit. It didn't work out for Horford there. And then Horford's had this resurgence as an impactful player who I'm still amazed at how well he's played the last couple of years, going deep into the year with these Celtics runs. But Bam is so good. And I wonder, and it doesn't matter because the roster is not designed this way unless you want to include the draft pick, who's a big. But would Bam be better, even better, playing alongside like a more traditional center? I mean, because Davis was a power forward coming in, but the best version of the Lakers going back to when they won the title was that, okay, Davis, you may want to play power forward. I think the Lakers even tried to massage it a little bit, being like, oh, yeah, no, we're going to have Dwight Howard. We're going to have these other centers. Like, don't worry about it. You're going to be the power forward. Then you start watching the closing groups and the bigger possessions. It's like, it just doesn't make any sense to have you not play center in today's game, especially And at time, even though Davis, like the best version of him was somebody who could really stretch the floor. And we know that we've looked at some of the shooting stuff with him and going like, is that part of his game gone? But he just had an incredible year. And I love that pairing. It made me think about Bam in theory with a bigger guy because Bam can initiate a lot of your offense. But he's not really somebody who stretches the floor. So I don't know if you could ever play in today's game, even though I was loving what I saw last night. Could you play Bam with a traditional center? Is there enough spacing from Bam? Probably not the way you would need it to be, even though he's, I think, really good in the face-up. He's good at passing. Again, he initiates a lot of that offense from the elbow and all that kind of stuff. But you'd probably need some kind of center or somebody else if you want to play a bigger player with him to have some other element of spacing, because then it starts to pivot back to this Cleveland thing that we've been talking about forever, as much as we all like Jared Allen. I think that we saw a more unlocked version of Evan Mobley in that series against the Celtics because Allen wasn't available to play with the rib injury. So just kind of one of those little things I'm thinking about, but at least for this part of it, and it's one game, I'm not getting too carried away with it. I did think the first quarter was so bad it was worth commenting on because I didn't think like, hey, now they're just going to be terrible. It was just a very terrible, disjointed first quarter. And I think there will be a defensive question there for Kerr where it's like, is AD and this Bam combo actually give him a better closing group, which then leads to like who actually is going to be the power forward. So that's really all I was able to take out of that, kind of looking forward to the whole thing. The concerns about the team, as it doesn't really mean anything, right? Just the commentary around the beginning and the bad start. It leads to two very predictable things: that they don't have a point guard. If they have Steph and they have Drew Holiday and they have Halliburton and they have Booker, who's played a ton of point in his career, and they have LeBron, they should be good. If they were to not win the gold, I don't want to hear about it not being a point guard. Like, they don't have a point guard. Like, they have plenty of guys that actually are the primary ball handler and initiate all the offense for their teams in the NBA. And these are some of the best players in the world. I think they'll figure it out. Or if it doesn't work, that won't be the thing that I would blame. And then on the other side, too, whenever it's international play, much like soccer, the coach gets the blame. So there was a little Steve Kerr stuff going on with that last night, too. He's not the one throwing the ball out of bounds. He's not the one dribbling it off his feet. He's not the guy that can't catch. He's not the guy out there missing open shots. But ultimately, they turn things around. And the rebounding edge, although the numbers wouldn't tell you that it was that significant, it felt like a real challenge for this front line for Canada, where if you look at it this way, as you start thinking about the Olympics and the title chances here for Team USA, Canada's playing Dwight Powell and Kelly Olynyk at center. Powell's not even in the rotation for his NBA team, and he's the starting center for Team Canada. So this push of talent from Canada is a real thing. There's some great players coming out of there. But when you look at the talent gap, how many players from Team Canada would even make the Team USA roster? Clearly, SGA would. He's one of the best players in the league. He could potentially start, depending on kind of how you wanted to do things. The next player is Jamal Murray. Is Jamal Murray better than, say, Derek White, who's now replacing Kawhi Leonard? I think he's a better player. But then you can get into fit and how comfortable Derek White is playing off of the ball. And if you needed him to play on the ball, he could do that. And if his defensive versatility is an advantage for him. So he's probably a better role fit. Even if you just redrafted the entire league, Jamal Murray goes higher than Derek White does. All right. That's the right way to look at it. So if you wanted to say that Murray's better than Derek White and that he would make Team USA, but that's what I'm talking about here when we look at the talent gap. The second best player for Team Canada, it's not a lock that he's on Team USA. So we all know the talent disparity throughout the world and what this should still be, and despite the international guys winning MVPs and all this stuff. And I think the longer-term concern of how the European game raises their basketball children in comparison to how we do it here in the States. I'm not plugged into the high school thing. I'm not the AAU thing. I hear everybody bitch about it all the time. I certainly see these physically gifted players that are incredible, that can score at will at the high school level and these showcase stuff. And then you can see them get to college and go, hey, how come all this stuff isn't working? And they haven't really ever developed a counter. But in the talent world, right, in the world of finding these special human beings walking around, it's like, okay, well, if he's 6'8" and has that kind of body control and doesn't have the counter yet, that's okay. I'll work with that. And that's why we have the draft and recruiting. And that's why we prioritize some of these guys that we look at. And then there's Perry Jones. You're just like, what happened? So when I think about like the concern when they have this bad start, again, it was bad. The talent part of like the momentum of where American basketball is in comparison to depth, it's still just not even close. Like, look at the rest of the rosters. And the funny thing is if you look at Team USA, they're minus 390 to win the gold right now on FanDuel, I believe. The number 2 team, like with the next best odds, is Team Canada plus 900. That's by the betting world. That team you saw last night has the second best odds to win the gold. And if you run through like I said, we go through their entire roster. You're like, wait, that team has the second best chance. I mean, I was looking up South Sudan stuff. Apparently the newest country. I don't know. I've gotten into a deep dive on that. I started looking up age of countries. A lot of debate there, a lot of timelines. I don't feel comfortable sharing that information with you because I'd have to do more research on the whole thing. When I saw Luol Deng connected to, I was like, he's playing? No, he is not playing. His cousin is playing. And Wenyan Gabriel's on the team. But Luol Deng was put in charge of putting this team together, putting the roster together, and they're in the group with Team USA. Canada didn't shoot the ball well. It was a mess for him the entire time. And I think it's worth remembering also when we see Team USA struggle, they've only had 2 practices. Steve Kerr said it. LeBron had said it. Kind of throwing this group together. You can see them trying to figure out the hierarchy of how this is all going to work. Last night was clearly just an exhibition, but it was also an exhibition for Team Canada too. So on the broadcast, when Gus Johnson said, hey, Team Canada really thought they had a chance to win this game tonight. Okay, but the talent gap is massive and you're in the same boat as everybody else. So we can, from a very, like, it's not even an American pride type of thing. It's just what you're concerned about. Like, oh, Team USA hasn't really had that many practice. They just kind of threw this team together. There are concerns that I have a bit of. You have this older guard of these incredible players with these massive resumes, whether it's Curry, LeBron, Durant. And then you have some of these younger guys that are like, we're going to have this next wave feel like they're going to replace these older guys really quickly. Like this transition. I don't know if it's just the bias of what's happening right now, feeling like, have we had it like this before? But it seems significant in this passing of the torch type of roster at both extremes. Like all these guys that are younger, they're going to be on this team moving forward, and then what they're going to do in the NBA and how we're going to talk about the face of the league. Well, I guess from an American standpoint, we're not sure if we're even going to get there yet with the absolute domination for the MVP award from the international guys. But it's not like Team Canada is out there running a ton of practices. It's not like some of these other guys have been playing together for years and years and years. I think we've run into that in the past. And maybe you understand Serbia's international history better than I do. You probably do. But when you go through all the rosters, this would be a massive disappointment. And it should always be a massive disappointment because basketball depth in the States, there is no comparison. Chris Ryen, elder statesman at the Ringer.
I am.
Us. How's it going?
What's up with you, man? It's great to see you. I was going to ask you to be on the watch soon to see what Ryan's watching. So thank you so much for having me.
I'd love to come on.
Okay. It's a date. It's a date. Have you been watching stuff or has it just been too much sports, too much NBA?
It's been too much travel and it's been too many hotel rooms. And so now that I've been back in LA for a few days, I jumped deep dive because I do appreciate like this time, although I've dipped my toes in some of the WNBA world. I love the international soccer. I don't plan my day around it, but when it's on, I can't stop watching it. And then I was excited for Team USA last night. I was kind of like, all right, I got to make sure I'm ready to go. Like it was weird to have a game, because it's usually such a part of the routine for so much of the year for me to go, okay, you got to make sure you're back, be back by 7:00. Then that first quarter happened, which I touched on here in the open. But TV wise, like we can get into it now if you want. Presumed innocent.
Let's talk about it.
All in. It is. I don't know if it was Ceruti that said this to me or if somebody else has said it to me. Apple puts out some incredible stuff, and yet it doesn't seem to like live in the daily consciousness the way, say, the Bear does or some of the FX Hulu stuff.
Yeah, I think it's partially the kinds of shows that they make. So they aren't making, with the exception of something like Presumed Innocent, hey, did you see that last night? Like, you have to watch it the night it drops. And even for a lot of people, I think it's kind of like unclear what time the shows are available. Like, maybe you'll get a push notification, but it's like, oh, wow, they got another 2 of these are up there now. But I think that this is one of the first ones where I feel like you see people being like, yeah, I'm not going out tonight because I want to see what happens to Rusty.
I'm in. I think it's terrific. And I remember the movie. The movie was like a really big deal. I don't know. Was the research on this right that Harrison Ford was told not to do it because it was going to make him unlikable?
That sounds right. I mean, like, I think that those guys were very conscientious about, like, hey, you know, you're here now. If you mess with this too much, I mean, people think of you as Han Solo, but he was always really good at doing like edgier roles. Like, he worked, you know, he did Frantic, he did Witness, he did Presumed Innocent. Like, I think he liked to screw around with his image a little bit in a way that I wish more big actors today did.
Yeah, he was. I think for him, you'd have to go like, okay, Han Solo, Star Wars, you know, Indiana Jones, I've got it. But I think anybody that gets into acting at some point, especially if you're his status and his level when he was just dominating that time, it depends on how old you are to really like understand that he's the biggest star in Hollywood.
Yeah.
That I imagine those guys do want to get back to kind of some of that stuff. Like Witness was a different kind of movie, but there's just so many people that are told like, don't bother, like don't screw up the formula. And I don't know if that happens more now, or maybe, you know, a lot of times I don't think the audience is blamed enough for some of the stuff that we have available to us, but it's a dark role. And then Jake Gyllenhaal seems like the perfect modern day version of this, because Gyllenhaal is not someone that's played it safe. Nightcrawler, he's an absolute lunatic.
Yeah.
And maybe we are more accepting of people showing more range now, but back then, if you were this huge movie star and there was a formula and it worked and your approval rating was through the roof, I can imagine people being afraid of like giving the audience a version of them that they're not going to like and derailing wherever their career is.
Yeah, but I think they were more gutsy than the guys are now. I mean, Gyllenhaal's a good example of somebody who's probably leaned so far into his actorly predilections, his tastes, that he's, you know, with the exception of Roadhouse, doesn't make a ton of like Hollywood blockbuster fare. But this would be to imagine like what it would be like for Harrison Ford to be doing Presumed Innocent and Frantic and Witness at like, this would be like if The Rock or Ryan Reynolds or somebody like Chris Pratt was like, hey, I'm going to do a movie where I'm accused of killing my my mistress. You know, like these guys all kind of treat acting as a plank in their celebrity now. But like this, we kind of came up more at a time when Tom Cruise was like, I'm going to do Eyes Wide Shut. You know, that sounds like a good idea. And it's like, you're really gambling with a lot there.
I wonder if Cruise would do those anymore.
He says he's going to, because he, you know, he's been making Mission Impossible movies and blockbusters for so long on this run. And he seems to be suggesting that he wants to get back into working with big time directors. I mean, like he signed a deal with
like when?
I don't know. I don't know if he lives through the next Mission Impossible. Maybe we'll see him do a really like considered character piece.
My favorite character in Presumed Innocent is Peter Sarsgaard.
Yeah, Tommy.
Who would be my number one draft pick for an actor if the category was, okay, you have to draft the character who says he's fine when he's absolutely not fine. Who does it better than anybody? And it's like, yeah, the entire room would just be like, who are we taking number 2 after Sarsgaard?
Yeah, right. He is. It seems like a role he was born to play, as this stepped on and stepped over prosecutor. I needed to ask you, because like him and Bill Camp and all the sort of character actors that are in it definitely seem a part of the world that they're in. And then Gyllenhaal is clearly, it's his Roadhouse body. Like they must have been shooting these things back to back in some way.
Yeah.
Where either he was coming off of Roadhouse or going into Roadhouse. Do you understand Rust being this jacked from swimming and running on a treadmill? Like, what's going on?
No, but when he takes his shirt off, when he's swimming, I imagine somebody's like, maybe Gyllenhaal said it, which I would respect the hell out of. Like, let's not let this six pack go to waste. Like, can we get a couple shots? Can I take my shirt off sooner? Maybe we do an underwater thing, because he is so ripped. And you're right, it has to be because it was also happening. Or maybe he just decided, like Tom Hardy post Warrior, where he was like, I am going to become a badass. I am going to learn how to fight. Like, I'm super into this, which has happened to actors before. But I just imagine whether it was Gyllenhaal or the producers are like, if we've got a six pack to work with, let's get it in a shot.
Yeah, with all we see of his workouts are these sort of like cardio exercises, and it's like, are you pulling a boat when you're doing laps? Like, what's going on? What's going on with this?
Bill Camp's role as the defense attorney for Gyllenhaal's character here, I don't know what they did with his makeup. I think these guys are incredible because, let's face it, they're not the hottest actors in Hollywood. But I love guys like this that are just like, I can imagine when they told their friends, like, I actually want to be an actor.
Yeah.
And they're like, seriously, dude? But he is so good. He is exhausted. He's emotionally worn out. I mean, everything that you would think it feels like, this is the highest compliment you can pay anybody, but it feels like a lawyer who's great at acting.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like the first time I really was like, who the hell is this guy? Did you ever watch The Night Of? When it was on HBO years ago. So he was a cop in that. He's just so great. He feels like he's like an old piece of furniture in one of these like offices. Like, you're just like, oh my God, like this guy seems to have like emerged fully formed from this world. And like, did they have to give this guy a single note, when he was acting?
No, I mean, I think I'd be embarrassed. I think he would just look at you and be like, you don't think I have this figured out by now? Like the expression that he wears on his face throughout this, because, I started watching Mayor of Kingstown finally. And our Booker Allison is like, she'd be on me for years. And with the Taylor Sheridan thing, it's an auto, like, I'll give it a chance. But Renner, and I've only watched the first season, but Renner is so important to that because there's some other Yellowstone guys that just kind of popping up all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And you're thinking, okay, Fish and Wildlife to now lead detective. And it should be an easy transition, but I think you notice the gaps at times with just how amazing Renner is at this stressed out, almost like everyday version of the Punisher, where he doesn't have the van and he hasn't like gone full Arsenal and, the absurd storyline that takes for anybody that read the comic books or watched the series on Netflix, which I thought was really well done with your guy, Bernthal.
Yeah.
Do you want to give us a little? Let's warm up to it.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there when we talk Embiid.
Yeah, maybe Embiid and Team USA stuff. But there's just not a lot of gaps in this show right now, Presumed Innocent. And if you're younger and you don't know the movie, it works. If you're older and watch the movie, you probably forgot everything that happened. But they're doing a great job with this. And it stayed consistently. And it's kind of that old design of cliffhanger too. They are ending with cliffhangers, like just huge cliffhangers every time, which maybe makes people more frustrated because we're so catered to now where you can just watch the next episode and Apple doesn't want to do it that way, which I kind of respect a little bit. Because I do think binging is I'm stopping you here just to make the point. Binging a show gives you a different relationship with the characters than getting to take a week off from them. It's the whole discovery of Pam actually being terrible on The Office. Week to week over the years, you never picked up on it. It's like you were hooking up with her and then you married her when you binged and you went, whoa, this is a tough hang. And I like that Apple does kind of push back on that by design because there's an anticipation. But I imagine most people are just annoyed that they can't watch everything they want to watch exactly when they want to, because that's usually what happens now.
Yeah, so the guy who's sort of in charge of this show, David Kelly, who has roots, he goes back to LA Law. Like, he's one of the 5 or 6 most successful television producers of all time. And it's interesting to see his kind of sense of structure and his old TV bones in the new house that is streaming and prestige, kind of like expensive movie stars in your show. When you have like those kinds of movie stars and when you have like the pressures of streaming, there are definitely going to be different things that you have to do versus say, hey, like we're just making a 22 or a 12 episode show and it's hopefully going to get renewed. He actually, like, I think is really good at building out these B and C plots to keep the show kind of like afloat so that you're basically like being satisfied on an episode to episode basis. And then still in the last 10 minutes, something crazy happens and you're like, I can't wait for the next thing to start. I found the easiest way to watch Presumed Innocent is basically to watch like two at a time, where it's basically you get the satisfaction of seeing what happens after one cliffhanger, but you're not like burning through the entire thing. I mean, I think that The Bear is something that people were probably like, I'm just going to watch this over the course of a weekend, if not like 2 nights in the middle of the week. And this is a little bit more of a fun, like you'll remember like, oh yeah, summer 24, that was like Presumed Innocent, like that lasted for 2 months. That was great. Like, I think we need more of those shows.
The Bear can be binge wise. Like it's that feeling when you're watching Uncut Gems where you go, okay, like I'm the anxiety level, like the goal is to have the audience have this anxiety level throughout. And I'm not into season 3 yet of The Bear. I still have a few episodes to go with season 2. But when you watch a bunch of those in a row, it's shot so well. It has this tone to it that is, I think, what everybody would hope to have because it just feels a little different. But the hectic nature, the chaotic nature of a kitchen, which is well done for anybody that's worked in a kitchen. It really is crazy. Like the people turn into lunatics.
Yeah.
Like some of the craziest people I've ever known. I spent a couple years working at the Black Dog in the kitchen, started washing dishes when I was in high school and then prep cook. And I never even made it to the line because, I wasn't going to be a lifelong cook. But like when you're younger and you're impressionable and these guys were like, I couldn't tell. I was like, did these guys have it figured out? And then when I got older, I was like, nope.
Yep.
Like they don't have it figured out.
Yeah.
Like I remember with the holiday parties, especially it'd be a little different to be on Martha's Vineyard in the winter and it would be a holiday party with the people that were still there. And guys were just out of their fucking minds. And then I remember this one chef just started throwing plates. He started throwing plates up in the air. And they were smashing them. And it was like towards the end of the party, but it wasn't like it was 3 a.m. It was still like the party. And he just started taking all of these plates going, what's going on? And he started smashing them. And then the head chef, who just was really good at having like the line ready at all times. And I'm not talking about the line in terms of the kitchen. He just always, your nicknames, he just destroyed you immediately. He was made to give everybody derogatory nicknames. Like that was, if there was a way to make millions on it,
that used to be a real talent in this country.
I've never come across anyone in my life that's better at giving derogatory nicknames than this guy. He just would nail it immediately. And that guy that was throwing the plates was called Norman Bates for the next 2 years that he worked there. I forget his real name. I was just like, this guy's really smart.
But he hung on for 2 years. That's great.
Yeah, he hung on for 2 more years, but that's probably because he would be willing to live on Martha's Vineyard year round as an adult.
Right.
So there's a bit of like, what is that line? I don't know. I don't know if it's about Vegas or whatever, but like, I think there's probably a bunch of places in the States that would say this, but like if you moved here, something went wrong.
Yeah.
If you were living on Martha's Vineyard year round 30 years ago on purpose and you weren't from there and you weren't independently wealthy and you just like the quiet, you actually were just a part of the working force and trying to survive. And he was really smart. He was a friend. And then he had this disastrous holiday party where he started just smashing shit and giving some sort of speech like he thought he was doing some sort of improv theater thing, except for destroying the restaurant's property. He was Norman Bates. The rest of
he's just psycho from then on. Yeah. I think that the restaurant business now has like a much different kind of like reputation where the Bear has done a lot towards this. I think Bourdain kind of like charted the arc of this where when he wrote Kitchen Confidential, it was about the guys you're talking about where it's like, this is where people work when they really can't work anywhere else. Like they're not fit for wearing a button-up shirt and sitting down at a cubicle every day. Like this is like, you can get a job in a restaurant if you have charges against you. You can get a job at the restaurant if you've got a drug problem. You can get a job at the restaurant if you're living out of your car or whatever. And it's like an underground economy where a lot of this stuff is through cash. And then over the years now it's become like Rene Redzepi looking at a radish and being like, yes, like I can make this so many different ways, and it's much more I think touchy feely and for better and for worse. But yeah, the bad old days of guys like Norman Bates throwing plates around because he's just willing to live in the vineyard in December is pretty funny.
I remember too, the chefs would all make fun of the owners. They make fun of the owner's son. So I came up through their side of it. And I thought, yeah, these guys are right. Like the owner's terrible and the sons are idiots and these guys are dicks. And then years removed from that, I ended up becoming friends with the sons and they were all like the greatest guys. The owner was a terrific human being.
Yeah.
Like they were all really good people despite having this wealth, that they were really grounded and were kind of about the right things. And it was funny because I remember being like, and it's funny when I worked there, everybody hated you because they were jealous, and that's just what they did. They were going to talk down the people that owned it, and yet all the hours they put in. And he was like, yeah, he's like, they're actually, it was really, it's its own story. So I'm not going to go too into the whole thing. All right. Speaking of preparation in the kitchen, the Sixers have been cooking this offseason.
Hey,
you made a great point.
Did I?
Yeah, you made a great point. We'll get to that later. No, it was about the construction where you get everything you want. I mean, for free agency to go this well for an NBA franchise, planning out cap space is actually really rare. So I think Morey deserves all the credit in the world for actually pulling this off, because there is a long list of teams and fan bases that go into a summer like this with all this wish list dream scenario, and it doesn't happen, and it's mission accomplished. But then once the roster gets put together, you start to see like, wait, who's the power forward going to be? Can this team pass? Which you brought up. Are you now post the mini elation of a plan executed to now nitpicking what the roster actually is?
Yeah, definitely.
That was fun,
definitely. Yeah, it's mostly like depth concerns. It's just like, I think that they've got 5 certified players and then a bunch of guys who it's like, maybe the Jared's going to be good, and maybe the UCLA kid's going to be good, and we'll have enough like firepower off the bench to like field an NBA team. But I think that it's a complicated thing with the Sixers because of the ceiling that they've imposed on themselves in the second round of the playoffs. So that you're basically like, the entire question facing this team is like, can you get out of the second round? And almost anything that happens over the course of the season is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Like, Embiid's won the MVP. This team has been up at the top of the Eastern Conference and in the middle of the Eastern Conference and still gone to the playoffs. And every playoffs is exactly the same. So it's really like, is this Paul George thing the twist of the combination lock that unlocks it? I'm just so happy that like this worked out. There was definitely a time with Daryl Morey where it was like, hey man, so is the Harden thing, that's your party trick? Like, that's it? Like, is there another idea somewhere in the clouds? And the Paul George like master plan, I was very skeptical that this was going to get pulled off. I definitely just was like, it seems like he's just going to go to the Warriors if they can get this trade together. So for him to just nail it and for it to like just be like, no, it was always Philly, is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's 2 reasons, right? It's the Golden State one that you brought up, and then Bill and I talked at this at length, is that we just always assume Paul George gets the 4th year, even if you have a bunch of arguments of why you don't want to do it. And if you wanted to get critical of Philly, which would be unfair, and I think just wrong, of like, well, if the Clippers didn't want to give him the 4th year, why did you get? Well, it doesn't matter.
Not really in that position.
Yeah, it's Can we get the Paul George first year and then figure out the rest of it?
Yeah.
Do you think they're, I know your answer, so I'm not going to ask it that way, not equal to Boston, but like, what do you think it is? How do you see the hierarchy in the East? I
think that they're on their night is, if everything is going their way in terms of health, I think they're just as good as the Knicks. Like, I think the Knicks thing is like a great story, but I don't know if they have like an interior answer for Embiid and Giannis and maybe even Porzingis. So I think that they're the second best team in the conference. But it's not like super clear. And maybe at this point, actually, like, do you feel like Milwaukee's almost being like underrated at this point because of they didn't do anything?
I do, but I understand it. They're older. Dame is hurt a lot. I still just have so much.
But he's working out this summer. He didn't do it last summer.
Yeah, I said it to Bill after I'd heard that conversation with Doc, where Dame was like, hey, I knew I was going to get traded, so I didn't really work out. Yeah. Like, so you did nothing?
Yeah.
If I were a Heat fan, I would have gone, maybe this wasn't that big of a deal. But I think the Heat would still, if you could just go back in time and say, okay, would you still say yes to this? But again, it wasn't a yes or no on the Heat side of it, despite the way that it was covered for such a long time. What's the approval rating right now of, maybe I don't even know if we do Philly athletes. Where is Embiid right now, his approval rating in comparison to other athletes in the city?
So as far as Sixers goes, as far as I can tell, and certainly in my personal power rankings, Maxey has left the Earth's atmosphere. Like Maxey is just like he's just everybody's fucking favorite party guest. Like the video of him signing his contract has been like is probably like the most watched thing in my house this week. Is just like every one of my Philly friends is like, oh my God, did you see this with Dr. J giving him the black jersey and Embiid's there and Daryl's getting choked up and Calipari's calling in. It's like, this one feels very homegrown and natural. I think Embiid's got a lot to prove. I think there's a lot
little tone there. Little tone.
Well, no, I mean, it's also like, we're coming up on Red October. People are freaking out about the Phillies. Like, and the Eagles are emerging. So it's just like, I think that you're asking me at a weird time because of last night with Embiid.
Okay, give me your last night takes then.
God damn it. Couldn't he got on Kawhi's flight? Just be like, me too, man. Can I get on that one?
So it's not what you saw last night. It's the fact that he's out there last night.
Well, first of all, it's like the idea of him aggravating a knee in Team USA basketball is just like my greatest nightmare. The second thing is just, Bill always talks about how like guys who go into Team USA are part of like this brotherhood that changes them and like revolutionizes like their competitive spirit and everything. And I'm like, that wouldn't happen yet though, right? like that still might happen because last night it just looked like a guy who'd never watched international basketball before.
Yeah, it was ugly, and I'm touching on it, but not like, okay, now I look at Embiid entirely different. But it's been a growing thing. And I think I was on Pardon My Take when it came up because they were making fun of Tatum, like trying to see if they could get to 10 players before they could rank Tatum. And obviously they were just messing with me, knowing that makes me really upset because I get so emotionally worked up about Tatum's ranking.
Yeah.
But it was something that Zach Lowe had said where he was like, here are the 4 players that are unimpeachable. And he put Embiid in the group. And I was like, I think I've been really nice about Embiid for a long time. And it feels like we're finally at that point of, if they don't get out of this, but no, it's a little like the Chris Paul thing where I get defensive about Chris Paul. It's like, look at all these playoff losses. It's like, well, because look how many times he wasn't, like they blew that series. He wasn't even playing. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, but that's part of it. All right, fine. You got me. And when I look at some of the Embiid stuff about how patient he's been, like everybody generally in Philly is in a great mood because this was such an awesome offseason. But that's been then turned into Embiid stayed the course. He did it the right, it's like now you're just making up shit to feel even better about the entire offseason because he has been the primary reason. Other than, look, I'll give you Ben Simmons just emotionally, mentally falling apart in that Atlanta series. It still makes no sense whatsoever that they lost that Hawks team at all. But Embiid has been the constant, which is also another reason why approval ratings for Maxey are through the roof, because Maxey can draft off the attention that Embiid gets as the real face of the franchise. So it's not because he elbowed Dwight Powell. It's not because he was up and down in the Knicks series. I think there were closing moments against the Knicks series where I went, I know who he is. I know how talented he is. I even like his personality, but I'm starting to have closer questions with him. And don't throw me fourth quarter stats because that's just not, I'm looking at those moments. And I do think, unfortunately for him, because he's this old school player with these futuristic abilities for somebody his size and the mobility and everything, he still needs a bit of assistance getting into what he needs as opposed to the wings that are already going to have the basketball. So some of that's just the design of the way the game is played and how his game fits in and all of that. But I think it's going to get ugly for him if it's another second round exit. I think that ugly year that I've wondered about is if it's finally going to get to like Harden Westbrook levels for him. I wonder if that will happen.
Yeah. And I think I think the MVP works against him in that way. I think specifically that MVP race. And I think for a certain sector of basketball fandom, the perception that he was gunning for the MVP award and maybe trying to inflate stats at certain points. I mean, he's certainly like, I know Bill never will forget the Embiid playing against Wemby and scoring 70 against the Spurs and then taking the night off against Jokic. Like, he doesn't do himself any favors when it comes to regular season stuff like that. I do think that for as much as he suffered for his health issues over the course of the years and conditioning issues as well, it shouldn't be underrated how he has had to get used to 8 new guys every year. And I've been thinking about this a lot because listening to you and Bill talk about it on Sunday, and Bill was obviously like, the Celtics like aren't going to be able to keep this team together, and like this is bad for the league if we can't do dynasties. And I think that it's been weird as a Sixers fan over these years because just as soon as you're like, you know what, I kind of like these guys, and you start to get into the 7th guy off the bench or whatever, it just feels like the season ends and like they've completely turned over because Daryl and even GMs before him were very savvy about keeping guys on these sort of 1-2 year team friendly deals that they could package to try and go for a star or clear cap space. But that kind of, there's an attrition in terms of your connection with the team when that happens. And I think for Embiid, he's often been very candid about like, yeah, I really like playing with JJ because after a few years, JJ and I figured out exactly how like he's going to go here and I'm going to go here and then I'm going to look him off, but dribble handoff and all that stuff that's kind of boring. It's like he has to get used to new guys every season. He's already talked about Maxey as his favorite teammate ever. He's played with Maxey for like 3 seasons. It's like, and so he doesn't have like this sort of institutional, hey, it's you and me and these 3 other guys. We're going to do it together because he's always got the entire deck is getting shuffled every 18 months or so.
It's a really good point because if you go through all the title winners, the Celtics, this group has been together with adjustments. So are we giving them too much credit because Tatum and Brown have both been there without realizing that Porzingis was new, that Drew was new, and that White is not exactly homegrown? Horford's had 2 different runs with him. So how consistent is that really? Or is it just so important that the top 2 guys are consistently together? Denver probably together. I mean, we could get into every single transaction here, which is just going to be a waste of time. Be like, well, they added this guy and he was kind of new.
But Jamal, Jokic, and MPJ has been like the trio, and Gordon. Yeah.
Yeah. Golden State, don't have to get into that. Milwaukee, it felt like the 1 and 2 pretty consistently together there. The Lakers thing was relatively new, if you think about it.
Yeah.
It was just the second year with Anthony Davis. I think it's a good point, and I think you would want to, what's great is we've grown into this together, and now we're kind of ready, but that's just not what the standard is going to be for Philadelphia. And I'm not going to say like they have the most pressure on them to win a title when they haven't gotten out of the second round. I don't think that that's fair. I thought it was very clear Boston had the most pressure on them to win a title, considering Denver had already gotten one. Oklahoma City is going to be young. Minnesota's probably going to be a little bit better. It may not play out that way in the regular season. I'd imagine the scars from the playoffs are going to make all those guys better. I think there's another level for Ant. Dallas has a chance to maybe be better, but I worry about the perimeter defense with those 3 different guys. So it sounds tough to go, oh, Philly has to win. But if you're not picking them as the best team in the East, you can't then say they have to win or it's a massive disappointment. They could lose to Boston in an awesome series in the second round and you'll feel better about the team, but it's technically not going to be any different. If they make it to the Eastern Conference Finals and lose in 6 or 7 and it's really good and Embiid has maybe some better moments than these closing moments where, like, some people must think I'm insane with this, and I know that I'm not. Do you agree with me on some of those passive moments from Embiid late? Or
I think, it's almost more descriptive. I would be like, my description of it is that the things that work for him earlier in the game, like that feeling like he's this enormous guy who can play like a pinball in a pinball machine where he's like bouncing off of guys who are getting into him and kind of drawing contact and then on one leg finishing or kind of going up and under and finishing and all this stuff that's like, it's very loose limbed. Somehow at the end of games, that feels like a liability. And it feels like the ball protection, the ball security is not there. The decision making is slower. And it's like a heavyweight fighter who's taken too many shots over the course of the game. And then in the last round, it's like, I would love to find the like guy who's just like, the fourth quarter is where I come alive. And that is, regardless of the statistics, is not what Embiid is. You're never like, here comes Embiid in the fourth quarter, are you?
Well, he's still very capable of getting all the numbers that you need
Yeah.
because he's just so good at drawing fouls. Like he's taken 4 to 6 free throws in that closing stretch. Like he's just going to. But I know some people who would. It usually just comes down to Sixers fans being upset about the national guy saying something about their favorite dude. But I just see hesitation in a way with certain players that I always kind of look for. I'll look for it and be like, okay, who's really comfortable out there right now and who isn't? And at the furthest end of the spectrum, you have Ben Simmons against Atlanta. Like he is not comfortable. He is not comfortable right now in this spot. To the great players, who sometimes we probably give a little too much credit for looking comfortable because they take awful shots and they don't go in. We're like, well, at least he was comfortable though.
Yeah, right.
So it's not something I can usually. I would have to just go through and like point out clips and go, okay, this is a possession where I don't think he was really excited to have the ball here.
Yeah.
And when you're an MVP, you can't have those. You just can't. Which leads me to this. And we're going to bring Ceruti in here because we're now going to title this part of it the Mail It In topic segment of the summer. Does Embiid have the toughest job in the NBA? And somebody on Twitter started this, so it's not me. I thought it was an awesome question. Which individual right now going into this year currently has the toughest job in the NBA? I wish I could remember who did it. I forgot, but credit to you, whoever it is.
Embiid's a good shout. I mean, Steph Curry's job is difficult because his team's not very good.
But I don't know that the expectation is there.
No, he already has all the built-in whatever, and it doesn't really matter. But I don't know.
If he's never in the finals again, nobody's going to get mad about it.
They might miss the playoffs, though. That'd be
seriously
like asking him to drag that team to the playoffs is actually a pretty big accomplishment. So if you're just saying the expectations aside, like I just think his team's not very good.
I think Embiid's job is hard because the evaluation for it isn't going to start for such a long time until we get to the postseason. Like it really doesn't matter if he plays 55 games or 60 games this next season and he's just because he's managing his workload and he's trying to be in like the best possible shape for the playoffs. No one's really going to care about that. He's not going to get the same kind of heat that I think like say Kawhi and Paul George get on the Clippers. Everybody's going to be like that. Whatever it takes, man. Don't go out there and play on a sprained knee. That's my opinion. But when it gets to the playoffs, it's just going to be like if those guys even go out in a 7-game series against the Celtics, I think people are going to be slamming their head against the wall. So that is a tough job because in some ways it's like the entire season leads up to a moment that you might not even be physically available for. I'm trying
it's
to
not
think
going to matter, right? It's not going to matter nationally. I mean, the start that Embiid got off to last year was off the charts. Okay. And then you're thinking, as an MVP voter, at least for me, like, okay, after he won it, and what you think is a clear separation between who the better player is between Jokic and Embiid, I'm surprised that anybody would even debate that anymore. But there's still some people hanging on. Like the war's over. No, it isn't. I thought that was going to be a really tough vote because of the statistical profile, and the Sixers with a healthy Embiid are winning 50 plus, so they're going to be a good basketball team. It was going to be tough. It was going to be a really tough vote because I felt like after the finals when Jokic won it and all the stuff that went into that year, I was like, just remember kind of like my basic thing, unless somebody's it's off the charts statistically, which again, Embiid was kind of like,
he kind of came slingshotting out.
It was unbelievable. You go back and look at the start and you go, how are you voting against this guy? Even though you just don't think he's as good as, I would still say, a few guys.
Yeah. And also like the way that team was constructed in the beginning of last season with like the kind of like, especially with Batum and a couple of guys who they had some decent passers on the team. So I think he was getting service in a way that he hadn't been necessarily. Maxey got off to this rip-roaring start and it just felt like very balanced. Whereas like Embiid and Maxey are the clear 1 and 2 here. And everybody else is like on any given night can get 15 or 16. Like Oubre had a really great start to the season. Until that weird like traffic thing, but like it was like that was like a very well balanced team, and he was really thriving because of it until he got hurt.
I feel like the thing about Embiid as a non-Philly guy and who's not invested in it is I want to like Embiid. Like I think he gives a shit, and I like that. I think there are a lot of players that are above a lot of things in the NBA. They're just like too cool for school, and I kind of don't think that's the case. But like, what was the was it the Oklahoman when the guy wrote the piece about Kevin Durant being Mr. Unreliable?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's Embiid. Like, and I don't like it because I want to like him. Like, I think I like that he cares.
But it's strange to be saying
no
that because
faith.
statistically he's like unimpeachable. Like, it's not like you go, oh, Mr. Unreliable, you didn't show up tonight. It's like it's not in the numbers. It's something about like
it's in specific spots. Typically the playoffs there where it's like, oh,
and
all right.
He just doesn't feel like he's the galvanizing force for victory. It feels like more like he's like, man, you got your numbers. You did it. You got 24 and 12.
Well, I know that's why people lose their mind against me, because you just can hit me over the head with so many different stats. And I just always wondered, like, do people want to be this simple? Like, hey, is this guy better than that guy? Well, he has 2 rings. He has 1. Yes. So, all right, we can all pack it up and go home then. Like, we don't have to do any of this stuff then. We're just going to count stuff. And it doesn't matter what you watch or what you see. And all right. So Embiid, I think, is at least in the conversation for it. Somebody
and this
brought
is
up
specifically for players. This isn't for like the Hornets parking attendant or something like that, right?
Like, that's good. I did wonder if LaMelo Ball was in this conversation, but then I was thinking about like the coaching staff. So yeah, let's keep it to players.
Okay.
Because you're right. It could get a little dicey. Is Cade Cunningham on the list? Is he a first team all most difficult jobs in the NBA?
So I was curious. You mentioned this, and I was wondering, like, why Cade? Is it just because like he's got now like an extremely well paid, like pain cave where he's just like on coach whatever it is 4 of like his third season, and now is like, I'm just stuck here. This is where I'm going to be. Like, why him more than Scotty Barnes or something like that? I guess.
Okay,
That's a good question.
I feel like just to answer that question though, I feel like because I think Cade is I just think his ceiling is higher than Scotty Barnes. Like, I think I expect more from Cade. Like, I think Cade could be a legitimate.
Why?
Maybe it was because he went 1, and maybe I just there's too much bias in that. I personally, if you were telling me like I could have one guy, I would take Cade. And I know that there's a lot of evidence that would suggest that's not the right case. But I'm like a Cade believer, and I think Monty Williams, like, I just think not being around Monty Williams is like, was that 5 wins? I don't know, maybe more. Who knows? His roster is a disaster. They have no direction. So I'm just making excuse after excuse for Cade. But I also kind of think like he's got lost in the like former number 1. I feel like people don't talk about him anymore. People don't talk about Cade. So I almost don't even think he's on the radar of this list.
Yeah, he's on the radar. Well, I get what you're saying, but it shouldn't be about radar or not on the radar. It should be going into the year, the responsibilities you have, and being a number 1 pick means responsibilities. The contract means responsibilities. I like Ceruti, love his talent. I love like whatever the best version of his game is. Maybe he's a second team all NBA toughest job because Monty isn't there, because Monty made it a lot tougher. Last year, he would have won this award. If they added this to it, hey, toughest job in the NBA this year, which actually I'd find more interesting to vote on than clutch performer. This got demonstrably better because Monty isn't there. So maybe that's how we should look at it. What about, I don't want to change this because then these things can turn into just listing guys. What about Sengun?
Yeah, that's a really good one, because it's like the sort of cult fascination with the Rockets started with his majesty, like with him being like Jokic Jr., but then they got real good when he went out.
Yeah. And Jalen Green became the Jalen Green you hope to see.
Jabari at the 5.
He shouldn't play an entire season.
I'm still holding on. Yeah.
They got too many guys.
Too many guys. Houston from team stinks to too many guys.
That was like me on the Magic last year. Like, we got too many guys, too many good players.
Also, you know what? The other hard part is that with Sengun is, and I'm sure if I like thought about it, I'd be able to fix this. But like, it's kind of hard to see where to send him, right? Like, because if the deal is like you buy the system, not just the player, how many teams are like, yeah, sure, like we're a blank canvas, man. Come in, we'll run everything through you. It'll just be guys cutting off of you. Don't worry about it. Hold the ball at the high post. Like, he could go to like the basement and he could go play for the Hornets or whatever. But like, how many other teams like competitively would be like, sure, let's like we want to sign up for the whole program.
Yeah, it'd have to be like a Chicago where they just have nothing else going for them. It's like, yeah, we'll give you
Right.
this many touches, Sure. But
He's so
I don't know
talented, though. Like, I don't think he's this mirage of a guy.
Me neither.
We need to be fair to him, I think we would need to kind of see how it all plays out. But this is the part of the roster construction of, hey, we've got this big guy that can do all these things. It's like, that's awesome. Like, he's also in the way. And it minimizes, especially that team with all this athleticism on the perimeter. Not so much with Brooks and Van Vliet, but you get, and then Reed Shepherd. Although Reed Shepherd is fill in the blank, better
Too many guys. Too many guys.
Too many guys. Too many guys team is awesome. That'd be a good tier. Just too many guys. Don't know if they're good. Don't know if they're bad. Yeah. They went 41-41 last year, but I think that stretch is going to make it weird for Sengun. Anyone else here? Not Bradley Beal. I think he's got a good gig.
I think he does, but he's going to get hammered if whatever happens. It's like Beal has a no trade clause, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, he could still come to you and say, all right, but that's going to be weird to salvage. I mean, Durant has to be Durant again.
Yeah.
And he was good enough to be all NBA. So that part of it is fine. But I mean, they got stomped by Minnesota. And that was just it's not so much the talent gap, but God, I mean, that was horrifying to watch. I think Chet would be on this list if Hartenstein hadn't been signed, just because of asking him to survive a full NBA regular season and then the specific big matchups where I think all of us really like Chet. And especially when you were watching this year's draft and prepping those guys in the bigs, you're like, oh my God, like this is why Chet was so enticing, because he can still potentially do all these great things at his size with his handle and his pull up and getting into his shot. And like none of these guys are even close to this. This is not, like the gap between him and Russillo based on how they impacted games, because Chet, when he was at Gonzaga, he wasn't asked to do everything because it was a really good basketball team and everything else, but you just saw these moments of what he was capable of doing. And that's probably still where he's floating just a year into his career playing in the league. But it was so hard for what I think they were asking of him the entire time by not having another guy other than the backup Jalen Williams, who really played more like a stretch big.
What about some of the coaches? Because I was going to say maybe Bud has one of the toughest jobs.
Definitely Bud.
Low key, I was thinking about Kenny Atkinson, because it's an interesting match between his sort of skill set of at least what his reputation is, which is this developer of young talent, and a roster that's like pretty good, largely unchanged, and has like ceilinged out where they've ceilinged out. So it's like, if they wind up, for instance, just going out in the second round again, it's like, was it Bickerstaff or is it the players or whatever? But like Atkinson, it's like the gains Atkinson can make on that roster are like kind of invisible. I don't really know what he could do with that. I think there's some probably tactical stuff that I don't know that he can mess around with, and he can try to get Mobley to sort of another level. But that's such like a strange situation to be going into as Kenny Atkinson, plus added to which just, I can't believe that team's still together after the here's what really happened notebook dump pieces that came out after the season. So it's like Garland and Mitchell the first day, like, hey man, how's it going? Yeah, I haven't seen you in a minute. And like, where does that land on Kenny?
I think Garland was going to be somebody that was even going to bring up when we were doing the player part of it. But I can't help but there's like two things from 2 years ago with Cleveland. The defense was off the charts. It's the same team. It was exposed in that Knicks series because of the lack of offensive players you had to worry about, which I brought up already too many times. But bringing them all back, like I still don't give up hope on that team having a decent record and a decent seed. And if they're healthier than the other ones, and when you think about some of the runs that they went on, they have their own kind of Sengun deal where they went 17-1 over a stretch, and Mitchell's just unstoppable. But then you start asking the Garland questions and all this stuff. And I still like all four of those players a lot. Mitchell is a perfect example of, okay, you want perfect, fine. You can wait around for perfect forever. But what he is capable of doing from a scoring standpoint in playoff games that we've seen multiple times, and as much as I hated that Knicks series for them 2 years ago, like the stuff he did against Orlando, the stuff that he had going on against Phoenix years ago, all right, I get it. He can be a little hyper. He's not a great defensive player, but get us a bucket. He's on a very short list of, hey, get me a playoff bucket. He's not lower than 10 in the league. I don't even think it's, I'm not going to say it's not even close because there's other players that are certainly better than Mitchell, but there's a ton of value, especially at his age with all of that. So, I mean, if you're Cleveland, I mean, who knows? Maybe we just kick the can on all the rumors for him another year with the construction of this contract and the way it's really set up for him to sign in 2027. And the Woj's projection, I think it was like a $380 million deal based on what the cap is going to be at that point. But I still stubbornly like this team, even if I've probably convinced myself that I don't know Mobley and Allen as much as I like what the defensive numbers tell me. Yeah, I don't know if in today's game that's really what you want to do unless Mobley all of a sudden became the stretch guy. And don't hit me with 3-point percentage increases because it's the volume with that percentage, not, hey, he makes one a game and now the numbers look really good that he's improved his outside shooting, because it's still pretty rare that he's even going into that.
Yeah, they just feel like a trade away to me. Garland is the guy I've had in the trade machine to Orlando for the last 2 years, and I'm just waiting for. But if you're Cleveland, you're like, I can't trade that guy if I know that the other guy might leave and want ask out in a year too. So like you're kind of, I don't know. I just feel like this team is in like a 3-year holding pattern where it's like we kind of know what we have to do, but we don't know if we could do it. I notoriously was not as high on Mobley as some others were, but I think the playoff stuff was good without Allen.
If, there's a little feeling of like I was not as high as if you were right. That's what that
I think I am right. I think listen, we all I think when he's being compared to Kevin Garnett, I feel like I'm right, Yeah.
Tim Duncan,
the offense is just not there. But to your point earlier, like he was good in the Celtics series when Allen didn't play, and you're like, is that kind of the future of your franchise? But then
and that's
like,
the most exciting thing about Atkinson is like everything he said is like there's just like a whole other chapter for Mobley. Like we're
what was he going to say though? Like, it's going to be disappointing. This is kind of the finished product. Great defense. Great defense, though.
If Kenny Atkinson was like, I was famously not as high on it.
No, you have to say it the way Ceruti said it. I was not as famously high on Mobley. Okay, last one here. If this player retired, it would make the most people happy.
I love this question so much, and it can be anything from sports, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you hit me with tennis, I'm going to push back a little bit, but
right.
I'll throw Cristiano Ronaldo out there after that Euro performance. Tough scene overall.
It's good.
Probably needs to hang it up.
Steve. Got his killer's mustache today. Ready to go.
Well, Chris is on today. I know. You like that?
Did you see Steve, breaking news, Klopp rejected the USMNT?
Yes, I did. Which,
Steve,
the bar is so low that I'm just happy we got the ask out there, I guess. So
sure.
There we go.
Yeah. he took the call.
Yeah. Maybe he didn't. He just texted him back. Actually, not pass.
I was going to say if for sports wide, if this had been like maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, Bryson DeChambeau would have been up there. But I feel like he's really kind of done some important work behind the scenes, on YouTube to like reconstruct his image and rebuild his fan base.
I find him entertaining.
There was a minute there where I was like, I need this guy to get ejected off of the face of the earth. I think right when Liv started, that was happening.
Mm-hmm.
But Ryan, what's yours?
Patrick Mahomes.
I wasn't going to say it, but I did think it.
I'm saying go the other way, not the person that has the lowest approval rating. But if we look at the inherent nature of sports fans and the selfishness that everybody actually has, and there's probably a conversation they wouldn't share publicly that privately, like, you know who you are. But when the other team has a guy in an NBA playoff series and he gets hurt, you're not like, oh, I wish they had everybody, just to see what would happen. You don't actually believe that. I mean, podcasters have to say it. Like, I just wish everybody were kind of just healthy and,
Yeah, it's just not as fun.
Just, give us your best and we'll give you our best. You're like, fucking he's hurt. Yes, that looks like, oh, that's a knee. That's a bad ban. It's not supposed to go that way. Fucking right.
I don't mean to sound sociopathic, but I have considered like the extent, like what time of the season I would want the Mahomes injury to take place.
Let's not say injury though, because he's still active. All right. Let's try to avoid this getting picked up by like ChiefsDaggers.net. What I'm talking about is not being hurt. I'm just retiring.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to that point.
Good note.
He wants to play baseball. You know, maybe wants to play following his dad's footsteps.
Mahomes retiring changes the conversation for the entire. Like guys are texting each other on their text threads that are Bills fans, that are Ravens fans. You know, maybe some Chargers guys out there being like, "Dude, you see Mahomes is out for the year." All right, but in this case, if it's like he retires, so now the Mahomes blockade is removed from all of your hopes and dreams as an NFL fan, that might be the right answer.
Yes, that's actually the perfect answer. It's pandemonium if that happens. Season tickets go through the roof league wide. It's like, this is it. It's on.
The Raiders are like, we're killing renewals.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
So there's nobody else in the NFL. Is there anyone in the NBA? Is LeBron in the conversation? Is he at Mahomes level where people that just like, they're just glad it's over?
I think of that as a sports media thing, but I don't even think we'll be that lucky. You know, like I think of it as like, if he's just like, that's it, that's a wrap. You know, there's still going to be another like 12 months of like, of LeBron stuff on ESPN. But I think during the like Lakers coaching thing becoming a bigger story than the NBA finals run, I was like, this is really starting to get to me in a weird way. Like, and if he retired, I do think at least it would like remove that focal point for a lot of sports media.
I wonder how the split would go if you would ask non-Lakers fans and Lakers fans who would be happier if LeBron retired.
Because you think some Lakers fans would be like, I'm ready for this to be over?
Some is accurate. I just wonder
how many,
what that number really is.
And how many of those guys go to sleep in Kobe jerseys?
I was going to say, they're wearing the number 824s.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that I moved to LA only for that reason. I would have never understood it unless I had lived here. And I don't even live in LA, but I'm around it enough to understand something I would not have understood. If you explained it to me, I'd be like, they don't like LeBron because they still like Kobe. Like, he just showed up. He won a title there. Like, he's the reason they got Anthony Davis. This is a team that was irrelevant for a really long time. Not irrelevant, but if you want to look at how bad the records were combined during all those 9 years, like, it's atrocious. Like, the standard that franchise has. So, I mean, he did a lot and it worked. And you got him at the end, and he's extended the end in a way that nobody's ever even thought was possible.
He looked awesome last night.
I don't know who else is in this. I don't think there's a baseball one where they're like, oh, if that guy.
Oh, how about I was going to say Gobert.
Maybe American podcasters, former players, they'd be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like he's got like a ton of. Are there any Rudy fans?
The Jazz fans were very passionate about him because we know,
but
like,
they've moved on.
Well, the analytics.
Well, of course they did.
Like all the numbers
people.
Yeah, they're still comfortable in their Gobert position.
Heated debates, screen assist rates off the charts. Okay, I think we did it.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris. What do you have to promote?
Nothing much. The Watch, still cranking it out. I'm on Talk the Thrones, where we talk about House of the Dragon. You up on House of the Dragon at all, Ryan?
No, I'm behind, but I did jump in based on Ceruti's recommendation, and it is really good.
Yeah. So House of the Dragon, we go on YouTube and Spotify every Sunday right after the episode. So it's on the Ringerverse YouTube channel and the House of R.
How are the
Spotify
Dragon
feed.
Numbers compared to the Throne
One
numbers?
problem we're running into right now is we're down a couple Dragon Riders. You know, it's starting to become kind of a cold labor market there. So
like post-up players?
What's that?
Like post-up players?
Yeah, exactly. They just don't make them like that anymore. So we'll see.
Al Jefferson's out there season 3 on top of one of those guys.
Yeah. Greg Monroe's like, I can still give you 10 minutes. But yeah, House of the Dragon, a couple more episodes of that. And Andy and I are really excited about Industry coming back. So,
that's right. Industry's
yeah.
coming back. I too am excited.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking to them.
Can I just peel the curtain a little bit? So this was last night or 2 nights ago. I was like, all right, hey, we're having Chris on. Like, I was like, the House of the Dragon's been good. It's been better than I expected. Like, episode 4 was electric. It was like it's the closest thing I felt to like prime Game of Thrones since it happened. I was like, and Ryan's like, all right, like I could probably get 4 episodes in 2 days or whatever. And then he texts me and goes, wait, this is season 2? He hadn't even started the show. He hadn't even started the show yet. So I was like, all right, probably gonna be tough to pack in, 12, 15 episodes or whatever.
Yeah.
Ceruti was kind of on me a little bit. I was like, I have 36 hours to watch 4 hours of TV that I didn't have planned in my normal routine of all these things I'm trying to get done.
If you only had the 4, then it was worth it. Yeah.
But then I actually did go back and watch a couple of the episodes because I just can't do it. I can't do it. And
it's too complicated.
Like, I'm blown away, but I'm almost offended. Does the approval rating of the person in the room next to me go down when there'll be a show on and I'll be like, I'm just going to jump into this. But if you haven't watched any of it, we don't have to watch, or I'd watch the pilot over again. And the person just, no, it's cool. You just throw it on. Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah,
do you not respect story arc?
We had people that did that with Lost.
That many shows anymore that people can do that with. That used to be like, it was like, you could skip a whole season of 24 and just be like, I got it. Like,
hour.
Turns out those Serbian guys, like, they were bad news.
We had people in college who, when we got to college, didn't watch Lost, and they like started like season 4. I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, how are you doing this? And they just jumped right in. They didn't know what the black smoke was. They didn't know anything. Yeah.
Still not sure if I know what the black smoke is, to be honest.
I don't think anybody does. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, there's a couple loose ends that were not tied up.
A couple. Yeah.
Yeah. 1 or 2.
All right. Thanks, man. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.
You want details? Fine. I drive a Ferrari 355 Cabriolet. What's up? I have a ridiculous house in the South Fork. I have every toy you can possibly imagine. And best of all, kids, I am liquid. So, now you know what's possible. Let me tell you what's required.
Kyle's back. He's back in a big way. I don't know if he's better than ever.
He's looking tan, a little red, a little sun-kissed.
We have...
Oh, dude, I'm sunburned. I'm bloated. I got an ear infection and swimmer's ear. It's a true white boy summer here in the crowd, Joel.
Wow.
Yeah, but you got a little product in the hair.
No, this is straight water, dude.
You got it.
Wow.
A little salt water.
Are you serious? Yeah. You're like boy band hot right now, though. You've got some NSYNC vibes to you.
Thanks. Feel very warm.
Just
in the best possible way.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Did you frost the tips? I feel like
I
Kyle.
got a guy down here if I'm feeling crazy.
Okay.
Yeah. That was one of those.
Kyle,
yeah. You had to have frosted, right?
Well, I had a flip, like sort of not unlike this, and just the flip. So it wasn't like I wasn't a spiky hair guy, but I did do the flip, and the flip was definitely like peroxide bleached.
Yeah.
I remember I wanted to do it in middle school, and my mom was like, no. She just straight up told me no. And honestly, I thanked her for that 10, 15 years later.
Yeah. There's evidence of me out there looking
you
crazy.
You would look terrible. With your dark features,
Your
olive skin. I'm not sure you would have been able to pull it off. The email address is lifeadvicerr@gmail.com. Okay, let's get to it. We have a couple family dynamic ones here. Hey, guys, first come in and comment on the guy ranking his buddies in a bachelor party. I'm only sharing this because I think it might help strengthen all the groups out there, completely tear them apart. But either way, it's worthwhile. Our core group of guys, about 15, been doing this since 18. We have an annual golfing trip over a long weekend, and a member is drawn at random to do a pre-weekend. I was thinking pre-weekend outlook for another member in 3 categories: skills, drinking game, sports, ladies, etc. Okay. Drinking, good hang or not, basically. Intangibles, nobody knows, but you know when you see it. Yeah, I can see that. I've attached an example of one I wrote for this past one. All rankings are between 1 and 5, with 5 being the best. This is predictably shared with the group beforehand in the weeks leading up to the weekend. So it's almost like a preview of the upcoming season. I like that. On the Sunday before everyone leaves, we all meet at the local dive bar with an easel and a power rank. Everyone based on how they performed that weekend. Needless to say, the discussion is very spirited, and ultimately we crown one gentleman as the champion of the weekend with our annual trophy. Would love to see this incorporated throughout the country, or maybe everybody's already doing this. We're like party. Everybody else is not doing this.
It's kind of sick, though.
I like it. You lost me at the trophy.
Yeah, once you cross over into like we're doing too much, it's like actually this was cool, and now it seems like the geekiest shit ever. Once you cross that line, and like you said, it's intangible. You don't exactly know where it is, but once the dudes around you figure it out, they're like, I'm out on actually all of it now because this seems like for losers. So
I'm not out on all of it. I like that part. Maybe
no,
I'm
I
wrong.
agree,
Maybe
but I think when you cross the
these
line,
guys are having a good time, right? Yeah. Okay. Oh, wait. That's not even the email. So 6'1", 210 with no significant gym stats. In the pickup game of Glenn Davis, but with significantly worse footwork. I'm looking for some of your surprisingly helpful and on-point advice. Thanks. Wife 34 and I 38, been married for almost 3 years, and everything is wonderful. We met several years ago while I was dating another girl, and unfortunately for all involved, except for perhaps me at the time, I started dating both of them. Woo. I ended the relationship with the other girl in 18 and began dating my wife exclusively in 19. Some serious overlap in there. After we were engaged in 21, my younger sister, 29, who I was very close with, reached out to the ex-girlfriend and had her text me with the intention of breaking up my wife and I. I won't go into any specifics, but it involved fake phone numbers and screenshots of scandalous fake text messages. It took some doing, but I was finally able to convince my wife that none of the messages were real and that I'd been faithful ever since we dated exclusively. The betrayal was shocking to me as I thought my sister liked my fiancée wife and we all hung out regularly. I couldn't believe what she tried to do and immediately blocked her on everything and cut off all communication. This was in May of 21. So we're talking 3 years now. My sister's tried to reach out several times via new cell numbers and multiple email addresses in the years since, but I haven't responded and frankly haven't really wanted to. She's never apologized and only offered excuses as to why she did what she did. Perhaps I would consider opening the door to mending the relationship if there were apologies and remorse, but so far none of that has transpired. My question to you and the dream team is this: how long is too long to hold a grudge against a family member? Should I be more open to mending this relationship? Am I obnoxiously stubborn for wanting her to show more remorse? How would you handle a similar situation? My wife and I have agreed to follow the sage advice that is offered. Wow, that sucks, man. That's like a massive betrayal. I don't blame you at all for going. Like, think about that. Your sister is involved with your ex, trying to frame you for cheating on your current wife to then break you guys up. That's, we could get into the dynamic that the sister's supposed to have your back more, but we realize that's not always the case. Okay, nasty work by the sister here. I do not blame you for being really upset, and I usually default to like it's family, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But just to recap here, you get together with your now wife, and the ex with your sister coordinates something that's so fucked. Like, be mad about the overlap, be mad you picked her, be mad about all those things. But when you're lying, okay, it'd be one thing if they were true, but if you're actually making these things up and your sister's helping this person, that's a tough betrayal to get over.
That's like
I don't think it should
stuff.
be forever.
Like, you're a bad person.
But it sounds like you're even, it would suck. Did you find out just one of your siblings? You go, and it happens. I mean, bad people have to have brothers and sisters. But Kyle, let's go with you.
Almost
Any
wish
betrayals?
that it was like, I'm not a betrayer. Family's been pretty good to me. No betrayals.
Not at all.
But you almost wish there was like some sort of like drug problem or like something you could point to, like, all right, that's why you weren't yourself, undiagnosed, whatever. But it sounds like it's none of that. One of my best friends had this where his sister like just sided with the ex-girlfriend of, many years, and there's kids involved. And it was like, he's like, I can't believe this. I really can't believe this. And it was like 4 years. And I think he was eventually just like, all right, you're my sister, and it is what it is. And, I think you forgive, you don't forget, sort of deal. But I felt sick to my stomach for him. Like, he really couldn't believe, like, you switch sides and like you're like testifying in court for like, it wasn't like a bad thing, just like, whatever it is when they try to figure out, well, it's like family court custody stuff. And she was like on the mom's behalf, and he's like, wait a second, what the fuck? So I felt he was like sick to his stomach. I was sick to my stomach for him. But eventually, my whole thing was eventually he just was like, how long can I really keep this up? I think you keep it up as long as you feel like you want to keep it up. I think you're entitled to that, as long as you know it's probably not forever.
Yeah, I come from a big Italian family on both sides. My dad's one of 7. My mom's one of 5. There's a lot of hot-headed stuff that happens, but you just kind of like, family parties sometimes are interesting. Depends on the moods of everybody. And, when alcohol is involved, it's always kind of complicated too. But we've kind of nobody's ever been shot.
Anybody ever shoot anyone?
Not been shot, which is good. But, it's those things where like, hey, so-and-so does this, and it kind of pisses everybody else off. And then, then you give it a couple months and it just kind of goes. Now, nothing has really been done to this extent. I mean, this is like straight up betrayal. Like, this is, again, I don't blame you for being this mad. The thing that bothers me is like I would get over it, but I need an apology. Like I need you to acknowledge that you are at fault and you screwed up, and I still love you. And like it was a moment of I don't know, I just had a lapse in judgment, and then here we are. But if she's unwilling to even admit that to you, I kind of think you stand your ground. I mean, I'm not advocating like don't talk to your sister forever, but that just sucks. Like she clearly hasn't learned from the mistake. She really screwed you over. I mean, it could have actually ended your relationship with somebody that you really like. It just screwed your life over. So I don't think you're overreacting. I think you just have to have a talk to her and be like, I still love you. Like, I still want to be in your life. But if you're not going to apologize and take responsibility for what you did, then I don't know how we can see eye to eye on stuff.
Yeah, I think you wait until you're like one day.
I would
like,
ask
this is
her,
silly,
like-
and you clearly don't feel that yet. So just keep on going. But one day I think you'll look and be like, this is a little silly, right? The sixth Thanksgiving or whatever it is. Like you might just be like, I'm not going to let this have power over me anymore, and you'll just be changed for it, But until then, I think you're fine to just keep on doing what you're doing because you won't feel good about it. Otherwise, you can already tell she's not looking to like double back and say, like, you know what? I know I said all this shit. I was wrong, blah, blah, blah. It's not going to happen. It's like the excuse maker, and it's going to make you mad again, and you'll just get fired up. So I would just wait until you feel like this is silly and you can just move on without really having her apologize because it sounds like she's not going to.
Okay. Another family dynamic. Do I have to go to my brother's
Yes.
bachelor party? Gents, 5'10", 215 pounds, former high school long snapper. I need an unbiased opinion to the following situation. Kyle just jumps right in with a yes.
I was like, is the invite still out?
Kyle, was I invited to your bachelor
I didn't
party?
want you to say no, so nobody. I had 100% hit rate on my ask, so I was like, why do this to myself?
Did you ask
Fuck
Bill?
no. I mean, I gotta like. I think you could deal with what you would have seen and maybe move past it. I'm not sure if Bill could have. So
I don't think Bill could have. I mean, look, based on what we were allowed to hear about it, I'm not sure I would have
I could
loved
have
it.
seen him like making
I'm
content
also,
like
it would,
it's 9 a.m. day one. One guy just got slapped. I don't know. Nephew Kyle's on his third cigarette. Like I didn't need that type of shit. So I don't know.
Are you doing
Is
a
that
Bill
me?
right
I don't
now,
know.
or are
I'm
you doing
like
a
Kate
Ryan?
doing Sal, doing Bill, and it's lost in the sauce. So
But you're right. I can see Bill being like over under 20
That
and a
was
half
an-
Stellas today. What are we thinking, boys?
yeah, cigarettes, all the
Chicken lines,
stuff.
yep.
I mean, it just would have. He probably would have left early and.
I gotta be honest with you. That was a good
Shit,
bill.
Thanks.
That was a really good bill. Because I just thought it sounded like him. I didn't know you had that in you. I was
Oh,
not
thanks.
familiar with your game. Okay, so let's get back to the bachelor party. Kyle jumping with an immediate yes. I'm leaning hard yes. If you just are asking me to respond to the,
Yep.
you imagine Ceruti, 3 yeses. Okay. Well, let's explore. My brother's having a bachelor party in California to go on a quote psychedelic backpacking trip. Still 3 yeses.
Yes,
right.
but
Yeah.
still yes. Ceruti's on the
Tepid.
fence. I'm still yes.
All right, let's keep digging into the plan. The plan is to hike up Friday, camp, and hike back Sunday. The hike is 14 miles each way.
God damn
Still
it.
3 yeses.
You might want to just injure yourself, dude. Just take one for
Is
the
there a
team.
base
Just
camp you could just hang out at
All
while
right.
everybody
pay
does
for
stuff?
some dude's
Yeah.
pay for some dude's X-rays and be like, I broke my fucking leg, man.
Can I take the cart back to the clubhouse and see you guys at the turn? The hike is 14 miles, requires hiking and camping supplies that I do not have nor ever want to have. On top of that, I do not want to trip on shrooms in the mountains in a tent. It should be noted I hate hiking. My idea of hiking is staying at the Holiday Inn because there are no Marriotts around. Good joke. And we aren't even talking. There's always a La Quinta around. We aren't even talking about a campground. This is the middle of nowhere ship. No running water, no toilets, no showers. The most recent entry from an online trail guide says a challenging last 1.5 miles to the lake. I love that that's after 12 and a half miles. There is steep terrain, disappearing trail with mosquitoes present, and caution is advised when crossing the river. Apparently, I also have to forge a river like the friggin' Oregon Trail. And to top it off, because of the remote location of the trip, the logistics require me to catch a red eye home Sunday night where I have to go to work Monday morning. Being the brother, or am I required to go, or can I graciously bow out because I will be clearly holding back the group's vibe, who, for the most part, all want to do this trip. A few important pieces of information that need to be considered. My brother's a few years younger than me, is my only sibling. He recently potentially set the Guinness World Record for most burpees in 3 minutes. Well, we'll leave out maybe a little late on the... we'll just the entire group is doing an ultra marathon for fun this summer. Avid rock climbers. I'm talking about Mission Impossible style, scaling a cliff during the day, pitch a tent on the side of the mountain to sleep, and then climb up the summit the following day type of climbers. I got to be honest with you, the sleeping on the side of the mountain, a lot of you guys are just doing it to do it, right? Or is the mountain scaling takes so long? Yeah. I guess there has to be like some places where you go, I'm not going to be able to scale this thing an entire day. I'm sure those things exist. And then you think, okay, I'm going to sleep here. But I'm sure you're harnessed into it somewhat. So it's not like, hey, what if I roll over to the side
nightmares, dude,
to check my phone?
Am I waking up falling, or is that a dream?
Yeah. Oh, wait. All the credit to you guys sleeping in a canopy on the side of a fucking rock face, because you're a badass. I like to do some stuff. I don't think I'll ever do that. I'm a 39-year-old father of 3 from the Midwest whose physical activity for the week consists of downing a 6-pack or a few bourbons if I'm feeling frisky and playing in my golf league. The closest hospital to the trail is 2 hours away and looks to be about the size of my house.
Yeah, you're out. You're out.
This is such a no.
You're out, and
this
lie,
is such a
soften
no.
it. I would lie. I'd
right.
say I really just hurt myself or whatever. I would lie.
You don't lie.
I tell the
I
truth.
would lie.
Yeah, that
They don't
want you to go, by the way. If these guys, if this is what they're all about, they actually don't want you to go. Okay. This is a crazy ask. So at the beginning, when it's 3 yeses, do I go to my brother's bachelor party? Yes, you do. Is it all these things I don't want to do with extreme physical tests that I am not ready for? And I'm not into psychedelics. And all these guys are super into all of this stuff. You know, don't invite the guy to the orgy that doesn't want to be at the orgy. Like, that guy doesn't find a way to also like go, hey, you know, I'm feeling I'm going to hang over here for a little bit. Like, those guys walk into an orgy like ready.
Well, but
they know what's on the table.
Did
this
they ask
this
you,
is
though,
this doesn't make
really,
any sense.
I don't want to say this.
You're not the best man, right? Because you didn't plan the bachelor party.
Well,
so they've already kind of got it covered.
Maybe
Probably.
Maybe he planned it. This is what he wants to do, and all his buddies do this. But do they know that you can't do this? Like, or do they think you're capable of doing this? If they think you're capable of doing this, and they are actual, like, not experts, but they know the field, then I don't know. I'm still kind of like not a hard no, but well, the red eye.
What about that red eye?
I don't know. Like,
it's not a 1-day hike. If they were coming back to the hotel, that's one thing, or the cabin or the lodge or whatever is up there near those rock faces. If they were like, we got one hike, we're going to do this trail this day, we're going to do trail 3 the other day and whatever. And you're like, yeah, I'll hang back or whatever. Because this is like a continuous journey. I think you can be out. And if you think your brother knows you're not the guy, tell him. But
that's what I'm saying.
I could maybe just be like, dude, you won't believe what I just did to my ankle.
That's what I'm saying.
You won't believe it.
Like,
I'm
hey,
so
dude,
mad.
I'm like really nervous about this.
Wish I could go.
I don't think I'm physically capable of doing this. Like, I love you, but this clearly is your thing, not my thing. I don't want to hold you. I would just have that. Tell them everything you said in the email. I think that's totally fair. You might not physically be. I don't know if I would be able to physically do any of this stuff. I certainly wouldn't want to. And then you had the drug stuff in there, and I'm definitely out. But I think you got to just talk to him, like, and just say, hey, I'm not. You know, I mean to make this like a dare situation, but I think you just got to talk to him. You can't lie to him. Don't lie to him. Don't cop out. Be a man. Say, hey, man, buddy, I don't think you want me to be there. I love you. We'll do something on our own. Maybe we'll just do like a road trip to Jamaica, just the two of us, drink for a weekend and come back if you want to do that. But I don't think I could physically do this. I feel out of place, and I don't want to hold you guys back. So that's
not a drug guy, though.
Not a drug guy. Yep.
3 no's.
So it's 3 no's.
That was a hard turn. Yeah.
Wow. It's good to be able to change your mind. It really is.
I don't think they want
it's
you
just
there.
Like he can't not ask you, right? It would be he has to ask you. So yeah, maybe this is just a win-win and everyone can exhale like, whew, I'm not going. He's like, whew, you're not going. So that's what it's stacking up to be, I think.
Yeah. I think you're a little dismissive of that return flight because I think at 39 and 3 kids, maybe you're just not there yet, Ceruti,
I'm
but
not
that
saying
red eye
it's
would be hanging over him
awesome,
mentally. He's like
but if
pre-hungover.
I'm
Yeah.
hiking, mountain climbing, and doing drugs for a weekend, and then I have to take a red eye, the red eye is the least of my concerns. Of course it is.
But that red eye is going to suck so bad. It's going to. I don't think there's something that is more flawed than the human pattern of predicting how they'll feel on return flights that are booked.
Yeah, I don't have that yet.
And
I
people
can't
can
even
pretend and be like, oh, that might be a little inconvenient, or that might not be great. Like when I left Italy once, I was like, okay, so I have to go back through Dublin. I'm like, you know what I'll do? Let's look at what the options are. I go 23 hours in Dublin, a layover. That's perfect. I think it was ended up being on my birthday. I'm like, this is going to be awesome. When I landed in Dublin, I was so fucking pissed at myself. I was like, when did you think this was going to be a good idea? Like, you left Italy, you were there, like, get out of town. And what are you doing? Like, this is the worst. This is absolutely the worst idea ever. Why did you do this? And then they wouldn't let me get my bag because it was technically a 23-hour layover and it wasn't like a stop. So I had to go buy like toiletries. I just stayed in the same clothes. Yeah. I walked around and checked out the University of Dublin. That's not what it's called, but it was gorgeous. Is it Trinity? I think it's Trinity. So I made the most of it. It was fine. And it had a good time and checking out the music and all that kind of thing. So I made the most of it. But when you're actually like kind of going home, but then you're not going home, I have something coming up where I just look at the return and I go, okay, 5-hour layover in Amsterdam. I know what dudes are saying, but 5 hours. Like, who do you think you are? All right. Okay. That'll do it for the pod. Thanks to Kyle. Thanks to Steve. Thanks to Wargon. Check out our YouTube page as well. Ryen Russillo Podcast, Ringer, Spotify.